The combat's very intuitive. It's quick paced, which to me is realistic.
You
Um,
like? Okay, good.
yeah, I like the quick pace of combat because coming from where primarily we're playing 5e, 5e combat is notoriously lengthy.
Yeah,
The more players you add at the table, I mean, between action, bonus action, reaction, um, and then multiple players, it can just bog a combat down. And the one thing that I have found with that is that a table with a bunch of players, you will get players that will get bored.
yeah.
Uh, they disengage, they pull out their phones, and then you lose them. With this, it's quick. It's just everything's moving so fast, and you're trying to keep up with everything that's going on. It keeps people involved, and I like that. I
Yeah,
really do.
good, good. I appreciate that, man. That's kind of how I built. And I think I spoke to you before. One of the things that I liked about and the way I designed it is I wanted to be familiar enough with normal seasoned tabletop RPG players. Like
Hmm.
this is something like, oh, I know how to do this. I know I'm doing
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
But I've had I've beta tested. I've actually beta tested this game with more people who've never played D&D than have played D&D. I haven't beta tested a ton, but it's about 70-30. And all
Okay.
the people who haven't played catch on like that and they
Yeah,
love it. They have a good time with it. Even though they're like, "Wait, what is initiative?" And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, like
yeah.
that style."
Right.
And I've had people who've never played before have watched the last one, like it looks like a blast, and I was like, okay,
Yeah,
good, because
yeah.
that's what I would like. I know D&D is, and that's why I told you. For me, it was intimidating, depending on who you sat down with.
It can be, especially for new players.
Yeah, and so I was like, well, I think this will help bridge a gap. I know there's a bunch of tabletop RPG systems out there, so it's
There
hard to
are,
be
there
different.
are, and some try to simplify the rules. Um, some of them have done a fairly decent job with it. Um, Oath Hammer that's coming out is supposedly streamlining the rules. That's that Kickstarter I mentioned earlier.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Looking forward to see what their combat system is like. But I mean, I've got bookshelves and two spinner racks full of nothing but TTRPGs. Everything
yeah,
from D&D to the One Ring to BattleTech to Fallout. I mean, probably 30 or 40 different types of TTRPGs. And I mean, most of them, in order to add complexity and to allow players to kind of develop a sense of self and an ability to kind of defy the odds and stay alive, I think what happens is you amass so many rules and so many different actions and so many different things you can take in an effort to try to be flexible, that what happens is you kind of develop a system that intimidates people that are new to the game, where they'll watch somebody play it and they'll walk away. It's too
yeah,
much going on. It's too much to keep up with. There's math, and I got to add my pluses to hit, and I got to subtract minuses for my armor class, and then
yeah,
for a lot of new players, it's just overwhelming. I've seen seasoned players that will sit down with a new game system and just be at a loss. And to me, I came from a background of playing the original Dungeons and Dragons back in the late 70s, early 80s,
yeah,
where it was just simple. Drop a d20, see if you hit, you hit. Okay, roll this dice, do damage. Okay, now we're going to move to the next character. So that things just moved at a quicker pace. And death was very real. I mean, if you
yeah.
drop below 0 hit points, they had a system where, you go down to -10, you're dead. Yeah.
Oh, they had the same thing because I
They had,
never played the first original
yeah,
edition.
they had something very similar where,
Very cool.
once you hit 0, you're unconscious.
Yeah,
But if you've taken slashing or piercing damage, you're now bleeding out, and you've only got a certain amount of time for somebody to cast a cure wounds on you, or give you a potion, or bandage your wounds, or what have you, or
yeah,
you bled out and you died. And if you died, well, that's it. Sorry.
yeah,
Roll a new character.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and to me, that fostered in players a sense of wanting, I've got time vested in this character. I've come up with a concept, maybe a short backstory, I've given them a name, I've kind of developed this whole concept for them in my head. I want to keep this guy alive and play him more for a while. So you were a little more careful. You didn't rush into, you know, the forces of evil with your sword brandished, screaming your war cry. You played a little more realistically in my mind, and I
Yeah.
like that about this game system. Is I've got a pistol, sure, but there's 3 guys out there with pistols. I don't want to run out there and get my face
Yeah.
blown off. And if I do that, well, now I've put Lord Haberford and his children and Mary Poppins in jeopardy.
Yeah.
So you've kind of got it gives that balance of wanting to stay alive plus trying to accomplish the mission. So it gives you it gives a real sense of danger to it, and I like
Yeah. Oh man, I appreciate you telling me that. That's the stuff that I like a lot. That's why I
it.
was like, I think I like this.
Yeah,
This is still pretty low level, so obviously the hit points aren't super big.
right,
All the all the bad guys were pretty much level 1 versus your level 3, but there was multiple,
right,
which allows me to flex around flexibility with that. But the higher you go, the higher you go, the more damage does. So it stays. One of the things I always got worried about is the higher level you are, the harder it was for you to die. And I was like, I
right,
want this to still. I don't want you to lose that. Like, oh my god, I really don't want to do something stupid,
right,
especially the higher up you get. I didn't want you to feel immortal, when you get to level 10 and
right.
everybody you just wipe everybody out. One of the
Yeah,
things yeah,
because
yeah, exactly, right.
when you get that sense of immortality, you get bored. Well, I've done all I can do with this character. Let's roll a new character. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm planning on doing this is some I'm just asking you questions now. One of the things I'm planning on doing is having these branch off, similar to the way video games sometimes do. I don't again, I'm not familiar with a bunch of tabletop RPG. I'm only familiar with D&D and this, a little bit of Pathfinder, but not even that well versed.
Hmm.
Having them branch into subclasses that make them a little bit more defined. I know 6 character studies right off the bat is basic. It's just archetypes.
Right.
Um, and that can get old too. And
Right.
so instead of, I know how sometimes D&D will do where if you get to level 3, and
Hmm.
I thought about this, get to level 3 in one study, instead of leveling up, maybe saving 2 levels and dropping down and doing a level 1 in another study.
Right.
Um, I thought about that, but I'm not sure I want to do that. I think I might want to do subclasses where they branch into something more specific. What do you think?
I like. I don't like the idea of. I found multi-classing can be a problem, and what I've seen with 5e specifically is that people will multi-class, and what they're doing is they're cherry picking, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's so many YouTube channels out there that basically will coach and encourage a player to go in and say, okay, well, you want to play Paladin for 3 levels. Then you're going to want to dip into Warlock, take a level of Warlock so you can pick up this feat and you can pick up this feature. And then now you're making this character that is just a damage machine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what that does is it takes what, in my opinion, is already kind of a skewed challenge rating system. The thing with D&D 5e is the game is so heavily balanced in the player's favor. The power creep is so strong, and the old challenge system in 2014 D&D was kind of broken. I mean, you can sugarcoat it any way you want. It's broken. My players on my Friday night game are level 11. So according to the 2014 D&D, for me to challenge them, they should be fighting challenge rating 15 or 16 monsters. The problem is with the challenge rating 15 or 16 monster with this band of 6 players, they annihilate it in a single round.
Oh
They
wow. Wow.
destroy it in a single round. Your paladin runs in and smites. Your cleric of war is going to hit it with a with her guiding bolt, so she lights it up, so the next person has advantage on attack. The thief runs in, he casts booming blade on his sword, and he gets sneak attack. So now he's doing
Yeah.
40 or 50 points of damage. So it causes a real issue for a DM to challenge your players if what they're doing is they're multi-classing and dipping to what we call min-max. They take their character and they just they make this optimized character that is just a damage dealing machine.
Yeah.
And so for me to challenge my level 11 characters, I'm having to throw CR 20 or CR 24 monsters at them. I mean, they're
Wow.
fighting things that they shouldn't be fighting at 11th level just to give them a challenge. And it's like,
Wow.
okay, well, if the bar is set that high, if you want to play a epic level campaign where you go above, say, level 15, what's left for them to fight except for gods?
Yeah.
And
Right.
and to me, it's just there's not a lot of challenge there. So I challenge them with numbers and traps and layer actions and things like that to kind of counterbalance that some. But you can only do so much.
Yeah,
To answer
okay.
your question in my long-winded way,
No, no,
uh,
I love this. I'm
I would
I'm
say
taking
probably
notes.
what I would do is maybe not let them multi-class per se, but maybe say, okay, well, you know what, you've got this is your main line, you're investigative. Okay, well, maybe what you do now is maybe instead of multi-classing, you pick up like a specialty or a subclass for your particular learning thing, and just say, okay, well, maybe you decide you're going to specialize in the occult, or maybe you specialize in medicine, or maybe you specialize in gangland activity. Like, here
Mhm.
I have this note, it's written by this person, and now this person that's laying on the ground dead who I'm looting, well, he's tied into a gang. So maybe I pick up criminology, so
Yeah,
I can learn kind of the mindsets of gangs and where they hang out and things like that, to kind of specialize that character, make him more kind of sleuthy, maybe take him in a world's greatest detective Batman sort of way, where maybe he becomes a master of disguise so he can infiltrate these underland gangs, things like that. The problem with multi-classing is you'll get characters at your table, especially veteran players, that will pick and choose the best of each class, and they will make a character that's going to be hard for you as the author to challenge.
yeah.
Um,
That's I didn't actually think about that. I actually didn't want to multi-class because I felt like it might become so complicated. Like I really try to hone on, like, I don't want them to constantly be thinking about what would be the other character style.
right,
Um, it also it also used to bug me, anytime I played D&D, I was in a party with the same other kind of character class,
right.
because it adds not that much diversity. I was like, "Well, I like the diverse part."
There's not, and it can be annoying. Like my Friday night group has two rogues, and the second rogue learned from the first rogue. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide, and then I'm going to cast Booming Blade on my sword. Then I'm going to run in and strike with advantage because I have another player flanking that character, and then I'm striking at my sneak attack. So basically, I call them Max and Mini Me, because they basically do the same thing. And it's like having a twin of that first character, and they're both doing the same thing in the same
Yeah,
order. And
yeah,
it's like there's not a lot of it doesn't add any diversity.
yeah,
He's an arcane trickster. She's supposed to be a swashbuckler, and I'm like, but she's playing just like you.
yeah,
And um, she even dipped into mage, so she could pick up mage hand like he has, so she could pickpocket with a mage hand, and so she could pick up a couple of like cantrips. And I'm like, just take his character sheet and photocopy it and
yeah,
just put
right,
it in.
yeah,
And to me, I like diversity at the table. I ask people, if I'm going to be a player, what is everybody else playing?
yeah,
Where do I see a gap that I can fill? And then that's going to challenge me as a player, because I can say, okay, we've got a fighter, we've got a cleric, so we got somebody that can heal, we've got a wizard, so we got the magic covered, and then we have a rogue. Okay, you know what? I'm going to play an artificer.
yeah,
And then once I figure out what I'm going to play, then I kind of build my character around that, because it challenges me as a player, and it fills a gap in that team without adding a bunch of redundancy.
yeah, yeah, I agree. And that's kind of I so the way I have this planned out is about, I just wasn't sure if I'm going to do level 5 or level 10. It'll probably be 5, because it seems like people like to make choices early on. Where they do go into subclasses, but it's like branched like a tree. And so
Mhm.
if you have investigation, and then once you hit about level 5, you can go into a specialty class like what you said. And I
Mhm.
have some of those picked out, but the specialty classes are somewhat of a blend of two. And so
Okay.
you can become, if you're in science,
Mhm.
and then about level 5, you can become a medic, which means you start picking up a little bit more of the military. And if you're in military, you hit 5, you can become a medic, where you start picking up a little bit more of the science. And so
Right.
have a multi-branch system that way,
I
to
like
where they can dip into the others, but also they're not all going to be like that. But it gives me room to be able to keep these very. It's like sacred timelines. I don't want them to cross.
right.
So the thing that worries me is you don't get a lot of play to really customize, like what you're talking about, where there's a cool fun part about customizing a character into becoming a god, but
Right.
I don't think I wanna let that happen in this. I think I
Right.
wanna
Yeah.
keep it pretty basic and steady. Okay,
Well,
that's why I was asking you. I was like,
oh,
"Here's."
yeah.
I'm trying to
Just
pull Pitfall.
Yeah,
Um,
basic. and realistic and gritty. You want to keep that gritty kind of simplistic feel.
Yeah. Oh, and the one like the spiritualist, I do have at 5. I let the character choose between either going into the church or becoming an occultist. And so
Okay.
they like dark arts, or it's a paladin kind of thing where you give your life to Jesus and now you're just a church guy.
I mean,
And all your stuff built off that.
you could even say maybe they're of the Sacred Order of Templars. I mean, nobody knows what happened to the Templars. Maybe they're
Oh,
Templars.
that they're making an appearance. Trust
Oh,
me, I've
good.
got.
Good, good.
So
I love it.
one of the things that makes what I'm doing now is difficult is I don't know when because I'm not in the community and I've just started posting and participating and inviting people like you, and I've invited a bunch of other people to be like, hey,
Mhm.
come sit down, let me introduce this, because what I'm gonna get out of this is this, where I'm like, hey, what are the
Exactly.
pitfalls? Tell me your experiences, because this is going to be different than, and I'm making notes. That's why I was like, I've got to do this while beta testing.
Right.
That way I can avoid any kind of, you wouldn't believe, I haven't played 5e, but the amount of videos I've seen were like, here's the problems with 5e. Oh, and the new
Right.
rules that came out, all my timeline is nothing but people complaining about the new rules.
Actually,
um
I didn't pick up any of the new rules. There's a whole story behind that and my feelings towards WotC and Hasbro. The only book of the new 2024 I picked up was the Monster Manual,
yeah,
and I picked that up because they had nerfed a lot of monsters in the 2014 D&D, specifically dragons, because I came from first edition and in second edition. I didn't play third edition or 3.5 or even fourth edition. I went from playing second edition from when it first came out in the late 80s right up until 2005 2010, and then we kind of took a break from D&D and we played other games. We played BattleTech, we played Shadowrun, things of that nature, Star Frontiers. um, and I didn't play D&D again until I moved to Georgia about 5 years ago.
okay,
And then my wife and I were like, let's get back into D&D. And I'm like, well, I think there's a new book out. And we picked up the 2014 edition of the DM's Guide and the Player's Handbook, and we found a group locally and we jumped in and played with them. That didn't work out. That's a whole horror story of its own. But I just, to me, they defanged a lot of creatures, and the one that really stands out the most is the dragon. The
yeah,
dragons, they took away the ability for dragons to use magic. And I'm like,
what,
dragons are a mystical creature
yeah,
in my mind. And in the way I see them when I visualize a dragon, they have the ability to cast magic. Maybe not as proficiently as, say, a human wizard, but they still
yeah,
have access to magic.
they
And
should,
they
yeah,
should. But in 2014, they took that away. They didn't have spells. But in 2024, they have given magic back to dragons, and that adds a whole new element that people who are used to playing 5e are not equipped to deal with
yeah,
because,
yeah,
oh, yeah, we've got magic. So we've got magic on our side, and dragons can only breathe fire and they can only fly. Yeah, well, not anymore, buddy.
yeah,
They can not only use magic, they also have access to use magic items. And I'm like, that to me takes dragons, which were already up here, and just kind of elevates them back to where they used to be.
very
And
cool.
that's the reason I picked up that 2024 book specifically for that. And I told my players, we will not be playing 2024, but I will be using 2024 monsters because
Very
in
fun.
order to challenge you guys, I need to give these monsters an edge. So
Yeah, that's fun. I like that. Well, I'm glad some good has come of
some
the
good has come of it. But,
2024.
there's so many games out there now. And I mean, I have enough stuff for Dungeons and Dragons. I could play Dungeons and Dragons the rest of my life and never have to buy another game.
Yeah,
There's so much good homebrew content out there. You've got the DM's Guild. You got the Dungeon Report guys that are doing their thing. There's a lot of places to get homebrew stuff that you can buy from them and not have to support Hasbro or WotC if you don't want to.
yeah,
Uh, but there's other games too. Like you mentioned Pathfinder earlier. Pathfinder's a good game, though it can be a little heavy with rules and things. But DC 20 from the Dungeon Coach is coming out shortly. He had a very successful Kickstarter. He raised over $2 million
oh
for his
wow,
Kickstarter.
that's, yeah, I would call that
It
successful.
was insane. And I've beta tested those rules, and I'm kind of liking what I see there. Lots of flexibility for your characters without bogging you down with lots of rules.
Mhm.
The one we mentioned before, Oath Hammer, that's kind of got that's on my radar. That's piqued my interest. One
Cool.
Ring, where you can play in Tolkien's world, Middle Earth.
That sounds fun. I like
That
that.
one is exciting. I'm still trying to get my players on board with that. But you play during the Third Age, and you're basically prior to the events of The Hobbit. But darkness is rising, and your
Yeah.
character or different characters are kind of helping to set the stage and move things along for the free people to kind of defeat evil. So
When
I
you
like.
say, can I ask you about the ring?
Sure.
How different is it from D&D, just basic rules, or is it fairly
Um,
similar? Is it easy to
the
play, or is
rules
it
They're
completely different?
actually a lot simpler from what I've read. We haven't actually played yet, but I've read through the rule book pretty extensively. There is the rules as far as combat and stuff go are simplified. Exploration is big in this game, which I feel like D&D 5e kind of moved away from,
Mhm.
um, because they focus a lot more on role play and character development, and you kind of lost that dungeons aspect of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
Um, and for me, exploration has always been one of those big pillars. They talk about the three pillars of Dungeons and Dragons. Your exploration, combat, role play. To me, each of those three is equally important.
Yeah.
I don't think you have a well-rounded game if you focus completely on role play and you ignore the other two.
Yeah.
You can have a combat-heavy game, but if you're not really developing role play and you're not exploring, I mean, what are you doing? So I feel like there's got to be a balance there, and I think the One Ring kind of achieves that balance pretty seamlessly.
Very cool. Carl, man, you are a wealth of knowledge. I very much appreciate this.
I've been
Don't
doing this for a while.
don't be surprised if I continue to hit you up, being like, "Hey, how you
Oh,
feel about this? What do you think?"
all means, reach out to me anytime with questions. If you want me to jump in and play again, or if you want to have a group play and you want to invite me back, I'll be happy to play again. I had a great time.
I've got a quest in the works, or a little one shot campaign that'll be great for you and your son. Because I need two people who are at least friends.
Yeah.
The only thing here, and this is not bad. I've got to get better at this because it's easy to keep like what we just did. That was a longer one than any. That's the longest one I have,
Hmm.
and even trying to keep that in the main frame of like an hour and a half,
Yeah.
as I try not to push them that long, but I know that time pretty much. And if it doesn't quite double, but it doubles the more people you add. And
Right.
so I was like, I'm I'm making smaller quests with more stuff packed in,
Hmm.
so multiple people can play with it not being 4 hours of
Okay.
being online. So I've
Yeah.
got some cool stuff with that, Bane. But I absolutely appreciate you are a wealth of knowledge. I'll be hitting you up. Hope you enjoyed this.
I did.
Um,
I actually enjoyed it.
okay, good. Oh, one last question, and you gotta be honest with me. And if you're mean about it, I'm gonna clip this out of the episode. No, I'm joking. Um,
Okay.
is there this is there any does this stand out at all, or is this just like does
You
it
know what?
match up?
It does. I like the Victorian England setting. It's a lot different from other games out there. The only one that comes close, like I said, is Bison.
Right.
Um, Bison, and the reason that we gravitated towards that was because it was a different setting from D&D.
Mhm.
It's low fantasy. It's in a world that kind of parallels our own, so it's similar.
Yeah.
And there's history there, right?
Yeah.
So the good thing about Bisons is set in Uppsala, Sweden. So you can actually go into a history book and you can pull out landmarks and people and make them NPCs. And this game, I think, has a lot of potential to do that. You can take
Oh yeah.
historic events, kind of weave them into your story, and even twist them. Like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, Jack the Ripper, was he really one of the royal family? Was he the royal doctor? What was he? Maybe that's not what he was at all. Maybe he's somebody who's trying to frame them. You can blend that history into this game and make it something unique and of its own.
Yeah.
And I like that because it's a setting that's low fantasy,
Mhm.
and got some magic. You got Mary Poppins, you got your magic bowler, but that kind of takes a back seat to intuitive gameplay
Mhm.
and to people thinking outside the box rather than just running in guns a blazing. Hey, I'm going to sneak. I'm going to open up this sewer, see if I can sneak around behind this carriage.
Yeah.
It forces players to think rather than just rely on heavy dice rolls in combat. And
Yeah.
I really do like it. So this is definitely something that interests me. I
Very
will
cool.
be hitting you up for the beta testing.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Absolutely.
Definitely think this would be something that would definitely interest my players.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. I'll be hitting you up for advice. So we'll
Please,
go tit for
anytime,
tat.
feel free to reach out to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful night, and I'll definitely be in touch. Thanks,
All
Carl.
right. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.